You're listening to the weekly Parsha Podcast with Ari Goldwag, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance, Ramah B'Shemesh Israel 5779, 2018. This week's Parsha is Parsha Vayishlach, and I'd like to share with you a word from Chaim Friedlander once again, and he discusses something very interesting in regards to the Torah's description of when Yaakov Avinu is coming back to the land of Eretz Yisrael, of Eretz Canaan, the land of the Jewish people, and he's about to have an encounter with Esav, his brother. The Torah tells us that he brings his entire family over the Jordan River, and he goes back for the Pachim Ketanim, as our sages tell us. He goes back for some small jugs that he had left behind, and there he faces off with the Malach, with the angel of Esav. Now the Torah tells us, Vayivasir Yaakov levado vayavik ishimoy. In Genesis chapter 32, verse 24, the Torah tells us that Jacob was left alone, and he had a battle with a man. And our sages tell us that this man, just as we find in other places, that the Torah refers to an angel as a man, here too, it's an angel. Now I'd like to read to you inside what Reb Chaim Friedlander says. Very, very, very interesting. When the verse tells us that he was left alone, he was there alone by himself, the simple understanding of the verse is that it indicates that he was in a state of weakness. He was prone to something happening. It's easier to fight, it's easier to have a wrestling match with someone who's by himself. And indeed, our sages tell us that we learn from here. Yisrael says that we learn from here that a Torah scholar should not go alone at night. He shouldn't go alone. He shouldn't be going anywhere alone. Because Jacob had been left alone. He was by himself. And as a result, he was damaged. Gemara in Chulun Daf Tzadik Aleph, page 91. But we also find, very interestingly, that our Chazal say, in a different vein, in a deeper, as a deeper understanding of it, our sages tell us that the word levadai, the word he was there alone, is indicative of a certain advantage, a certain greatness of Jacob. As our sages say in the verse in Dvarim, Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 26, Ein ke'el Yeshurun, there's no one as powerful as Jeshurun. Rebrechi b'shem Reb Simon Omer Ein ke'el Mikael Yeshurun Yisrael Saba. This is a reference. Who's Yeshurun? Who's Yeshurun? So Jeshurun is a reference to the Jewish people. Who is that a reference to? It's a reference to Yisrael Saba, our grandfather Israel, which is one way of referring to Jacob. Just like in regards to God, there's a certain power that Jeshurun has. There's a certain power the people of Israel have. There's a certain power that Yaakov, that Jacob had. What is that power? What is that that amazing characteristic? Just like Hashem, it says, V'niskav Hashem levadai, that in the end, that the verse in Isaiah tells us that in the end of time, when the Messiah arrives, so God will be alone. It will be clear that God himself is all there is. Af Yaakov. So to Jacob, Vayivasir Yaakov levadai. Verse tells us that Jacob was alone. What is the idea of Jacob being alone? In some way, it parallels the fact that God will be alone. God will be the only. It will be clear that God is the only power. Somehow, in regards to Yaakov Avinu, in regards to Jacob, in regards to the people of Israel, in regards to the Jewish people as well, we will soon see there's this aspect of loneliness, of being alone. What is the idea of alone? What is the idea of this singularity, which is true in regards to God? We describe him as being alone. And what is the idea of aloneness in regards to the Jewish people, and specifically in regards to Yaakov, Jacob? So Reb Chaim Friedlander explains, what is the advantage, or what is the idea, the concept of God being alone in the future time? Mashma'usa. The explanation is, God is the only power, the only one who has control in the world. Every single thing that happens throughout the entire history of the world, it's all for, there's only one intent, It's all going in one direction. What's the direction that everything is going? In order to reveal the honor of godliness in the world. So the obvious question is, what do you mean everything is to reveal godliness in the world? What about evil? What is the concept of evil? That doesn't seem to reveal godliness. If anything, evil is a heder. It's the godliness being covered up, being hidden. But now that the power of evil is created in the world, and the human being has free will and has an evil inclination, it seems that a person can do the opposite of the will of God. That's how it seems. And he can cause through his actions that God's name not be sanctified in the world, that God's name be hidden in the world. A person can cause through evil, can cause the desecration of God's name. Don't think that that's true. Don't think that that's actually absolutely true. It seems that way for the moment. What's going to happen in the future? What does it mean? That God's name, God will be seen that God is all there is. He is alone. He is all there is. There's nothing besides for him. It will come out that all that which occurred, all that which was done through actions, good and evil, Kavod Hashem, it will be revealed to be the honor of God. Explains Reb Chaim Friedlander, that's going to happen in two different ways. Aleph, number one, amazing thing. When somebody who's evil, when someone who has done evil is punished by God, receives his due punishment, so and everybody learns the true judgment, the true ways of God, the true things. And even the person who is evil, he himself admits that God is righteous, that the punishment that he receives is due him. We find that our sages tell us this. Just like God's praises comes from the Garden of Eden, where the tzaddikim, where the righteous people are enjoying the rewards of their good deeds. In the same way, in the same measure, so there's a praise of God that comes up from hell. The people who are there, who are receiving their due, they're receiving justice for the evil they've done. They pour forth tears like fountains. Amazing thing. Their tears come down from their eyes, and all of those tears cool off the fires of hell. And this is my own kind of envisioning of it, but the tears fall on the fire. The steam that comes up, that very steam is a praise of God. What is the idea? What do they say? What do the Rishonim say, the ones who have done evil in this world? What do they say? Amar Rav Yechanan, Yafa Amarta, Yafa Danta, Yafa Taharta, Yafa Timesa, Yafa Chayafta. They say, that which you said is correct. That which you judged us is correct. That which you said was pure is correct. That which you said was impure is correct. And the obligation that we have, and the punishment that we've received is fair and righteous. So the evil ones themselves, through the evil and from the voices, from the throats of those who have done wrong, comes a praise of God that the just punishment that they receive is appropriate. That itself is a Kiddush Hashem. That itself is a great praise of God. Number two. That's the first way that even the evil itself is transformed into good. Number two, God arranges, God has programmed reality such that every single thing that happens in the world, even the evil things that occur in the world, ultimately serve a greater purpose, serve to bring about the will of God. Think about the example of the hardened heart of Pharaoh. He's evil. He didn't want to listen to the voice of God. As a result of his akshonus, as a result of his hard-headedness, his unwillingness to acquiesce to the will of God, it brought about a revelation of godliness in the world through the 10 makas, the 10 plagues, and through the splitting of the sea. Haman Harasha also it's an amazing example. Haman, the evil one, he himself, he created this, he built this tall gallows. He himself was hanged on those gallows. He was the one who gave the advice to Achashverosh, thinking that the advice was something that he would benefit from. But instead, Mordechai, the tzaddik, was the one who benefited from it, from the advice of how to treat someone who the king wants to give honor to. We find many examples of this, where the evil that's perpetrated, or that's attempted to be perpetrated by somebody evil, the result is that the righteous individual receives the good. When we look at the world, we have not yet had the clarity to be able to see how the things that seem to be so dark and so evil truly and ultimately turn around to be for the benefit of the Jewish people, the benefit of those who are good. That's something, however, that will become clear and apparent and obvious to the entire creation, to all those who exist. When the Messiah arrives, Moshiach comes, that time there'll be a revelation of godliness in the world, and we will see how every single thing was actually for the good of the world and for the good of the Jewish people. Okay? Amazing thing, amazing depth. That's the idea of V'niskav Hashem levadai. God is all there is. There's nothing besides for God. There's nothing besides for good. Because that is the true nature of God, and that is the true nature of the world. Now, how does that apply to a tzaddik? How does that apply to a righteous individual? What does it mean, Vayivasar Yaakov levadai, that on some level, Jacob is alone? What is the idea of aloneness in regards to the tzaddik, in regards to the righteous one? Chaim Friedlander, this is an amazing thing. This is an amazing thing. Okay, Shlemus HaTzadik, he says like this. What is the idea of the perfection of the righteous one? He says it's not dependent on Kalim. Hear this. It's not dependent on any vessels. It's not dependent on anything outside of himself. Amazing, deep idea. Just like when it comes to the honor of God, God's honor, which is us seeing his honor in the world, us seeing godliness in the world, us seeing goodness in the world, that doesn't depend on anything outside of himself. It's something that we will see ultimately. Those things that look bad, right? We're going to see ultimately that they themselves were intrinsically good. We're intrinsically part of God's plan. It's not dependent on anything outside of him. In the same way, in a precisely parallel way, when it comes to a righteous individual, there is nothing outside of him that's going to affect his intrinsic goodness, his intrinsic greatness. Everything comes out of his inner perfection, his inner greatness. Moral explains an amazing depth in the Mishnah. The Mishnah in Avos, in the ethics of our forefathers, says like this: Who is wise? An amazing statement. We think of wisdom, someone who's very smart, someone who's accomplished a lot, who's written many papers, who's received a Nobel Prize. That's who's wise. That's who's smart. Says Chazal, something different. They say, who is wise? Somebody who learns from everybody. Ezehu Gibor, who is powerful, who is mighty, who is strong, not the guy who works out every day. HaKovish es Yitzrei. Somebody who has an internal control over himself, who doesn't allow himself to be pulled in the direction of his Yetzer Hara, his evil inclination, in whichever way he is pulled. Ezehu Ashir, who is rich, not somebody who has lots of money, not someone who has mansions and many properties, not someone who is powerful. Somebody who is happy with what he has. Someone who recognizes that he has all that he needs. That's who's rich. Ezehu mechubad. Who is somebody who is honored? Who is somebody who is honorable? Our sages tell us it's the opposite of what you think. It's someone who shows honor to others. So we have here Hamishna Moine Arba Milas Akalis Kol Adam. The Mishnah is enumerating 4 different advantages, 4 different characteristics, which when we speak about them, they include all aspects of the human being. Number 1, Chachma, his wisdom, B'seichel, his intellect. That's number 1. Number 2, Gevura, B'tchunos Nafshay, the strength that he has inside of the characteristics of his soul. Ashirus, wealth, B'kinyanei ha'adam, in regards to his physical acquisitions. Kaveh b'yachas ha'adam l'siyosei, the honor of a person in regards to his relationship with those around him. Mishnah tells us an amazing thing. Just like when we speak about God's goodness not being dependent upon anything else, on any outside things that seem to be the opposite of his goodness, but ultimately it all we'll see inside of the evil thing, we'll see that God's goodness was there all along. It's something that's completely, it's not dependent on anything outside of God. So too when it comes to the milas of the tzaddik, the good characteristics of the righteous individual, we find that it doesn't depend on anything outside of himself, but rather it's something that comes from inside of himself and comes out. It's not something that comes from something external. Like the Maral says, all of the advantages, the positive characteristics, need to be inside of himself. It needs to be self-contained. The righteous one is self-contained. It's not dependent on anything outside of himself. Not from someone external. The Maral is going to give us a deeper depth into each of these 4 characteristics. I'd like to read them to you and try to understand them. We said, who is wise? Somebody who learns from everyone. It doesn't depend on him having lots of wisdom, knowing lots of things. That's why we say, says the Maral, that who is appropriate to be called wise? It's somebody who learns from everyone. He desires wisdom for its own sake, from his own self, to the point where he's willing to learn from anyone. If let's say a person is not willing to learn from anyone, just from one great sage, one rabbi, so then his wisdom is also dependent on that particular sage, which is outside of himself. It's not coming from himself. But just because he considers that rabbi to be significant, to be someone important, that's why he listens to him. He shouldn't be called a wise person. It has to be something which comes to him because intrinsically he has wisdom. He is intrinsically wise. It's the desire that a person has for wisdom, which also, he doesn't say this, but it also gives him a certain humility. He's willing to find wisdom wherever it is. He's willing to learn from anybody. It's not just somebody who's very wise that I can learn from, but he's willing to learn wisdom from anyone. Right? So that shows an intrinsic humility in regards to wisdom, and that's something that it shows an intrinsic aspect of wisdom. The second aspect, who is wise? Somebody who overcomes his negative inclination. And somebody who's very powerful and he can win in a battle with other people. So then again, his power is dependent on something relative. It's always relative. It's not intrinsic. Depends if he's stronger than somebody else. It's not intrinsic. It's only because he has something in relationship to somebody else. Somebody overcomes his own negative inclination. That's something which is inside of the person himself. It's intrinsic. It's not dependent on anybody else. Therefore, it's appropriate that he be called powerful because he's intrinsically powerful. Who is rich? The third aspect, somebody who is happy with what he has. Somebody who's very rich. He has a lot of possessions. So that's not something which is intrinsically, it's not intrinsically wealth. It's something dependent on something outside of himself. On his riches. He could just lose them. When he's happy with what he has. So he's not dependent on anything outside of himself. This is wealth which comes out of something which is an internal, intrinsic advantage, an intrinsic positive characteristic. And lastly, who is honored? Somebody who honors others. We can't say who is honored, somebody who gets honor from others. Why? That's not someone who's intrinsically honorable. It's not intrinsically honorable. It's not something which is intrinsic to the one who's being described. It depends on other people. Let's say one day they decide that they don't want to honor this person, so they won't have the honor. He's not intrinsically honorable. It's not intrinsic. Who is somebody who's honored? Who's honorable? Someone who gives honor to others. He is considered honorable because he is the one who has the honor inside of himself. When he honors another person, so he is intrinsically honorable through his honoring others. Someone who's honorable knows how to give of that honor to others. Someone who's truly, it's an amazing thing. You see in all of these, there's like a certain humility which accompanies the intrinsic aspect here. It's not dependent on anyone else. Somebody who's chashuv, someone who is important, knows how to give importance, knows where to find importance. He resonates with importance, and therefore he gives honor to others. He sees something important in others. He sees something special in each of them. So that's the idea of levadai. What is the idea of levadai? Amazing. What is the idea of God being alone? He's not dependent on anything else. His goodness is not dependent on anything that seems outside of him to be a lack of goodness. The tzaddik, the righteous individual, Vayishlach Yaakov levadai, what is the aspect of a righteous person who is alone? It means that he's not dependent on anything outside of himself for him to have greatness, for him to have goodness. I'm going to read the last point here and we're going to wrap up. Who is rich? Somebody who's happy with what he has. He points out something which is essential, with which we can understand what's going on with Jacob. It doesn't mean that a person has to live in a state of having nothing. He's poor. I'm happy with being poor. No, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't just mean that. He's happy with his portion. It means exactly what it says. He's happy with the portion that he's received. He might be rich, he might be poor, but he recognizes that what he has is exactly what he needs. Each individual receives a very specific and important task in his service of God. Here, this is the crux of what we want to understand. This is the crux of the point of what we want to bring into our own lives. Each individual has a special purpose in God's plan as part of the Jewish people. God gives each individual precisely, specifically, exactly what he needs in order to perform his task as part of the Jewish people, as part of that great whole. His own special task. Whether it comes to his talents, when it comes to the way, his personality, and whether it comes to the possessions that he has. Some people, as a result of their particular purpose in God's plan, they need to have a lot of possessions. They need to have many vessels. Rabbeinu HaKadosh, we find that Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Yehuda HaNasi, was somebody who in those days they didn't have the grocery stores that we have today. They bring all these things from other parts of the world where it's hot and it's cold. But in his house, whether it was rain or shine, whatever the season was, they did have. He was fabulously wealthy. He always had all the different delicacies that were appropriate for someone who was very wealthy. He was a prince of the people of Israel. He had to have all the wealth in order to bring about honor of heaven. As a result, he had a tremendous amount of vessels for that. He only used all of this wealth, all of the possessions that he had in order to fulfill his purpose in serving God. That's what he said when he passed away. He took his 10 fingers, his two hands, and he faced them up to heavens, and he said, he said, you know that I used my 10 fingers. What did I do here in this world? All I did was try to serve you, to work hard at studying the Torah. I didn't have any benefit from this world, even with my little pinky. He was able to be samech bechelkai, to recognize that each and every thing that he had in his life was all just a vessel to serve God. It was all about just to be used to serve God. That's what it means. Jacob goes back for the pachim ketan. He goes back for those small kalim. His recognition was that every single thing that I have is for the purpose of serving God. He recognized that everything that he has, that was intrinsic to who he was. It wasn't something outside of him. It wasn't something that it wasn't, his wealth wasn't dependent on anything outside of him. His goodness wasn't dependent on anything outside of him. But everything that he had was part and parcel of what he needed to be, to serve God, to come close to God. Everything was intrinsic. All the goodness that he had, all of the rechush that he had, all of the wealth that he had was something which he infused intrinsically through his samech v'chalko, through his recognition that everything that he had was to serve God. That was infused by his goodness. That's why Vayishlach Yaakov levadai. He was alone. There was nothing outside of him that indicated that he was good. There was nothing outside of him that caused him to be great. It was all intrinsically. He was able to recognize that everything that he had was to be used in his service of Hashem. The things that would look like it's causing him to be great was not great. It didn't cause him to be great. His greatness caused those things to be great. And if he would have had a lot or a little, it would have been the same thing, because he would have been levada. It was all coming from an intrinsic sense of greatness, an intrinsic desire to serve God and to fulfill his purpose. And I want to bless you, and I ask you to bless me. Hashem should help us to have that aspect, to incorporate this aspect of levadai, of the goodness coming from within us, the greatness, the kavod, the honorability coming from inside of ourselves, from a recognition of who we are and what our special purpose in God's plan is. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.